welcome to my knitting podcast. I have been in the biggest spring cleaning mood this past few weeks and it has really extended into my knitting. I have had some half-finished works in progress lying around, maybe some of them since August, September, October, and now it's time. This month they're getting done. These whips are not going to be whipping much longer. I want to have a blank slate. I work much better when I've got like 1 to 2 projects on at a time instead of this 5 or 6 or however many are happening. So I'm going to show you all the finished objects that I've got, and then we're going to move on to everything that I will be tackling in the next month. I finished both the jumper and the cardigan from my previous podcast. You may have seen the project vlog about this cardigan. This is a slightly modified cardigan number 9 by My Favourite Things Knitwear with no buttons and a garter stitch button band instead of the double knit button band. I think I knitted this in the smallest size, but I also think I knitted this off gauge. The yarn is a mix of hobby yarns, mainly Davina. The green and the blue are both hobby Davina shades. The pink is hobby Davina held with a strand of mohair, and the red is hobby alpaca silk held with a strand of the mohair, and there's also little stripes of just the pink mohair. This was a real trust the process knit for me because I don't have much of a colourful palette in my wardrobe, and I wasn't sure about whether these colours would go together, and if they did, how they would work with the rest of the clothes in my wardrobe. But I'm happy to report that I can fit this into my everyday style really easily, and I'm also happy to report that I don't find the mohair too itchy for me to wear, which I was quite worried about. I knitted this on 5mm needles as per the pattern, and this is my second cardigan number 9 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, which probably tells you everything you need to know about that pattern. I'm not that much of a cardigan wearer, but I think that like almost every cardigan that I would want to knit, I could make by adapting that pattern. So I'm really getting my cost per use down. This is more of a spring garment, so I haven't worn it more than once yet because it is quite long and most of my coats are quite cropped. But I am really excited to wear this now that it's getting a little bit warmer. And yeah, I think this also really marks a progression in my knitting to make something that looks the way that this does and fits the way that this does. I don't think there is anywhere for me to improve in my technique for this pattern. I think that I've done everything to the best of my ability, and I just love it. I'm just really happy with this. My second finished object is the petite knit zipper sweater. I also have a project vlog about this. This took me so long to knit because I didn't prioritize it. I casted this on Christmas Day and I didn't finish it until a few days ago. So what's that, like 10 weeks maybe for a jumper, which is way above my average. And I don't know if it's because it's so massive that it took me so long. I didn't really count how many hours it took me to knit, but from the size of it, maybe it did take me 10 to 20 more hours than my other jumpers. But I was also knitting other things alongside this, which honestly doesn't really suit me and the way that I knit. I really prefer to focus on one thing and have it off the needles a bit faster so that I still retain my excitement for wearing it. But I really love how this turned out. It did turn out bigger than expected. I knitted this holding 1 strand of hobby upcycled alpaca silk with 1 strand of fingering weight hobby soft alpaca. The yarn combination is gorgeous. It is slightly itchy right around my chest if I wear like a scoop neck top underneath it, so I do have to wear more of a t-shirt underneath for it to work for me. And initially I was a bit unhappy with the length, but having seen like video footage of me trying it on, I think it actually works for me because I don't own anything else this oversized. I am like 95% sure I'm gonna dye it dark grey. I loved the colour when I started, but I just think it's too cool toned of a pink for me. I know that grey is more cool toned than a cool toned pink, but for some reason I don't think that grey washes me out. I can't explain why. Maybe it's in my head, but I just like wearing grey a lot. I knitted this on 5mm needles with 4mm needles for the zipper collar. The zip is from the Petite Knit website. And what modifications did I make? Oh, I didn't do the half twisted rib. I just did 1x1 rib, and I cropped it a lot. I think I was a little bit off gauge. Not that it stopped it being any less massive. I would definitely recommend the pattern. The bit around the zip is a bit complicated, but there's lots of videos on the Petite Knit website that really make it a lot easier to understand. Also, I'm going to try this on so you can see. But I was really worried about how the high neck would look on me, because I really don't like turtlenecks, but because it's so oversized, the high neck, realistically, you can see the entirety of my neck here, even though it gives the impression that it's a high neck jumper, which I think looks so nice. I thought I would only want to wear this like open, but I actually think I like the look of it the most when it's zipped up to the top. Oh, you can really tell from my background, like all these paintings and stuff, I really like this shade of warm clay pink, and this is just a little bit off that, but honestly I think this and the grey would get so much wear. I really want to try styling this with like a little mini skirt and knee-high boots underneath to see if that works well, and I could have it as an outer layer in the summer evenings. It's less thick than I thought it would be. It's definitely very warm. When I initially made the gauge swatch, I thought this would be a very thick fabric, and it's not really. It's pretty thin, and you can tell by the drape, which I think is probably a good thing, because I don't know if this alpaca has the structure to hold the weight of a really bulky garment. Yeah, next time you see this, it's probably going to be grey. And my last finished object, I actually finished yesterday, and it's just finished drying from blocking today, and it is my beanie #1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. It's finally done. This was the first of my whips that I wanted just cut off the list. This is what it looks like on. I think it looks pretty decent. I wouldn't wear it with this top, but I think the shade of blue is quite nice. I do wish it was a little bit less bright, but I still think it's gonna look pretty good with a lot of my winter outfits. I have a dark grey long wool coat, and I also have a white puffer jacket that I think this will match with well. This is actually it inside out, because the actual stitch is meant to look like this, but I prefer how it looks inside out. So you can see where I cast it on and where I picked up the project again. The difference in my tension right here is really obvious, but it actually kind of works in my favour, because it makes the brim a little bit tighter, and so it feels secure around my head. This is a pattern that I had an awful lot of issues with at the very start, if you might remember, and it's because the video linked to casting on in this pattern is incorrect. I think it's because the video links to casting on a 2x2 rib, and you need to cast on a 1x1 rib, if I'm not mistaken. It was like 4 or 5 months ago that I casted this on. So that was mainly what put me off doing this for so long. Because I spent ages learning this new cast on method just for it to be incorrect, and then I had to undo my work and then find out what the correct cast on method was and do that, which I actually learned from someone's Ravelry notes, so thank you to that person. But once I did manage to successfully cast on, the rest of the pattern was super easy to pick up. They call it a half fisherman's rib stitch. You knit the panel for the brim, and then you turn your work as though you're doing a German short row and continue knitting backwards, which means that when you fold the brim up, the pattern continues from the brim into the rest of the hat. So if I fold this down, you can see the opposite stitch pattern is down here. I used some 6mm short circular needles to make this, and less than 1 bowl of Drops Air in the shade Blue, which is a really nice yarn and very similar to Hobby Divina if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to Divina. It's a really nice type of yarn that my sensitive skin really agrees with. I think it's like a blown yarn with a polyamide core and then alpaca. But yeah, sometimes with hats, if they're made of like thick acrylic sometimes or wool, the skin on my forehead gets really itchy and uncomfortable and aggravated, but this works for me, so I'm very happy with that. And as you can imagine, this was a very swift project to make. I think this was 2 to 3 evenings of knitting to get this done. So this is a really strong start to casting off my WIP pile. Moving on to my projects that are actively in progress, I've got this scarf, which I'm knitting from a hooks and needles kit. So the yarn and the pattern and the needles were all provided in my hooks and needles subscription box, which was gifted to me by the brand. This is a really nice wool and cotton blend yarn, and I actually am not following the pattern completely, which is purely accidental. The pattern is written in a booklet and I just forgot to turn the page back and forth. But this scarf is basically just a big triangle that you just keep making increases on, and it was meant to be a 20-row repeat, but due to my mistake, I'm making a 10-row repeat. It's a really fun and easy pattern to follow, and you just keep knitting until you run out of yarn. So the hooks and needles box came with 3 balls of yarn. It came with 2 of this pink shade and 1 of the grey. And as you can see, I think I'm more than halfway through my bowl of grey wool before I move back onto the pink. So I'm going to estimate that I'm about 60% of the way through this project, which is great because I picked this back up less than a week ago. And when I started, I think it was at about here on this little triangle, and I've done all of this while also making that hat. So this will very likely be my next finished object, and I want to have this done in time for Mother's Day because I want to give it to my mum. My next active work in progress is the Beanie Clava by Tinks Things. And not much progress has been made on this. I only really worked on this during my last weekend away, where I went on a plane and didn't want to take any knitting needles with me, so I took my crochet project instead. This pattern will eventually be a beanie where you can fold down the rib and it has a hole for your eyes and it can turn into a balaclava. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook, and this, what is this yarn? This is West Yorkshire Spinners Bo Peep Luxury Baby DK, 52% Falkland wool, 48% nylon. This is machine washable wool. There is a massive difference in tension here between the very start of the project and the rest of it. So I just started crocheting looser and looser. The stitch is a slip stitch through the back loop only, so it's much easier if you're crocheting a lot looser. And I just really hope that this tight cast on edge won't affect the finished garment too much. You can't really see the stitch definition too well because it's black, but it's sort of this like mock rib stitch made with a crochet hook, which is really interesting. And yeah, this took me the majority of a 5-hour flight to crochet, so it's not the fastest hat to make in the world. So those are my active whips, and now I'm going to show you all the whips that have been sitting in a corner gathering dust but are next in line to be worked on after these ones are done. Do we remember this? Do we remember my Handmade by Florence mixed cami? Because I barely do. I have a finished back panel here, and I think the mistake that I made was finishing a back panel and not picking up the stitches for the rest of it, because I can't just pick up this up and work on it. I need to like cast on some stitches and actually read the pattern to know what I'm doing. But it's coming up to that time of year where this is going to be something that I can actually wear, which is making me more excited to work on it. As you can see, I did not do the twisted rib. I'm just doing some other kind of rib because the twisted rib was very difficult for me. And I am knitting this with Knitting for Olive cotton merino in the shade Red Currant. There's one colour that I will never second guess about wearing, and it is a red. I am wondering how much longer this is going to take because this is my first ball of yarn and it looks like I barely even used half of it to make this back panel, and I think I need to get through 3 of them, so we'll see. But it is getting done. I think this is my oldest whip. I'm pretty sure I bought the yarn for this last July and maybe cast it on in August. I think through this project and also gift knitting fingering weight socks, I've discovered that I don't love doing fingering weight projects that much, especially on small little needles. So I think after this is done, if I want to make more similar tank tops, I'm gonna look into DK weight patterns instead. Next, I have the beginnings of a cable knit scarf. This is from another Hooks and Needles box, and it's knitted in this absolutely beautiful yarn. This has a similar feeling to the drop tear in the Hobby Davina, but I think it's more of a chainette structure. I don't really know what I'm talking about. You can see it's sort of like lots of links together, and the colorway is this gorgeous mix of blues and greens. The reason that I have not made any progress on this is that I'm fairly sure I've made a mistake somewhere in the 2x2 rib, and this is an I-cord cast on, and I really don't want to have to do that again. So maybe I can just find the mistake and correct it, but I just want to knit mindlessly. I don't want to have to do that. This is the little Hooks and Needles pattern booklet, and this is what the scarf is going to look like once it's finished. I am quite excited to get to this project because this is going to be my introduction to making cables, and I really want to say that I've done that. But again, there's a big part of me that just wants to knit mindlessly and not have to figure stuff out and use my brain at all. God forbid I learn anything new. Maybe by my next podcast I'll know how to do cables and I can be really smug about it. We'll see. And those are all my whips, so it's totally a manageable amount. They're all fairly small projects, maybe apart from the mixed rib cami. So I do think that I can get it done by the end of the month. And honestly, even just from finishing the beanie and making progress on the scarf, my mind already feels a lot lighter. I also have been making progress on my hand sewn leather bag. So I was actually working on this last night for the first time since October, which is ridiculous. I got sent this kit by the brand, which is Babylon Leather, and they send you all the components and all the tools needed to hand sew your own leather bag. So far I have added the bottom panel, sewn the two big side panels together, added the little feet, and I am partway through attaching the zip and the inner pocket. I'm actually filming a sewing vlog, which has been a massive motivation to have me do this, which is a ridiculous thing to say because it's not like it's work. Like, this is a hobby that I like doing, and it's so exciting to see this bag like actually start to take shape. I do have a few more knitting plans that I want to do, as well as my whips. It's one of my best friend's birthdays in about 2 weeks, and I've decided that I'm going to knit her a hat. I'm going to use the same free beanie pattern that I used to knit my mum a hat at Christmas because it was a very fast knit. And for the yarn, I'm going to try and get rid of some of the yarn in my stash. So I have this green shade of Drops Alaska here, which is too itchy for me. My friend says they don't have at all sensitive skin, so they should be fine with this. The only colours that they really wear are green and black and brown and grey, but I'm not entirely certain that this is going to be enough yarn to make a hat. This is only about 70 meters here. I do have more Drops Alaska, but it's in a different colour. So if I run out of yarn before I can finish the hat, I'm just going to join in that second bowl, and then I'm going to add this beanie to my big grey dye bath that I'm going to have going on for my zipper sweater and some other clothes. My other cast on plan is actually another hat, so I'm just going to be surrounded by hats and scarves, it seems. I have these balls of yarn left over from my petite knit zipper sweater, and my mum absolutely adores the yarn combination and the colour. And she also absolutely adores my beanie #1. Now, I did make her a hat at Christmas and she loves it and wears it, but it is a bit big for her. So I decided I'm going to make her another hat that's better fitting, and it's also going to be a great way to get rid of all this yarn because I have absolutely no use for this amount of yarn for anything for myself. And that is what the rest of my March is going to look like. Let me know what you're working on. I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!